Greetings, I'm Professor Hobo, and welcome to another HOBOTECH Knows product review. Today we have the SUAOKI S200 200 watt-hour portable power station, aka solar generator. Now I know many of you hate that term because this actually doesn't generate anything, it stores power, but hey, I'm not the marketing genius that came up with the term. Now we all got to use it. So let's go over some of the quirks and features of the SUAOKI. Now this is powered by a 200 watt-hour lithium-ion battery that's made with INR 18650P cells, running at 18 amp hours, 11.1 volts. Now, I couldn't find any information about these cells on the internet, except they probably are Westinghouse brand, but I could not confirm that anywhere, including on SUAOKI's website. So this is 7.7 by 2.5 by 10 inches tall, and it weighs 6 pounds, so it's kind of like a heavy laptop. Now this does support on the back a 120 watt pure sine inverter with a 200 watt peak from a single 110 outlet. This also sports MPPT charging, which is far superior to PWM when you're trying to get solar from sunrise and sunset or during the wintertime when the voltage is low. Now for those of you that don't know, MPPT stands for maximum power point tracking. It is the better technology of the two ways typically to charge these kind of things. There's PWM, which is pulse width modulation. It doesn't really use lower voltage very well. Now the difference between the two is that PWM charges linearly. So as the voltage goes higher, you get more watts. MPPT, the watts can go immediately from a low point to a high point because the technology inside it figures out the best way to use the voltage available to create the most amps. So you definitely want MPP charging when possible, especially if charging quickly from solar is important to you. Now, it's typical for most of these power stations, there's 3 ways to charge it: from AC wall outlet, 12 volt from your vehicle, and solar. Now the maximum charge rate is claimed to be 60 watts when accepting 14 to 40 volts. And they say MPPT kicks in at 15 volts. 40 volts allows you to put 2 solar panels in series. You can take 2 smaller solar panels, put them in series, stick them into this, and charge this thing pretty fast. Now the DC output on this can provide a constant 10 amps between 10 volts and 12.4 volts, depending on the state of charge. Now this does sport 3 USB outlets on the front. One is a standard 2.4 amp that everyone has. The other is a USB-A quick charge 3 port. And the third is down here at the bottom, is a USB-C port that can provide PD or power delivery to your devices. Pretty unique to get a power station this small with all 3 types of USB ports. Now this does sport a 6-hour charge time from AC wall outlet, but that's only because that provides only 32 watts of charging. It will charge in 4 to 6 hours from a 12 volt source. That's depend on the voltage. It'll be faster if the voltage is a little bit higher. But the real kicker is this will charge in 3.5 hours flat from 60 watts of solar. Now you plug the 100 watt solar panel into this and the MPPT charging kicks in, 3.5 hours flat, you can get this thing charged from dead. That's pretty good. Now it does sport a nice aluminum case with a rubberized handle, and the input and the inverter are on the back on this one. Now this does sport a pretty nice display, pretty much copies the MaxOak Bluetti exactly. It has the 5-segment battery icon that shows you the state of charge, and also has a watt meter for input and output, both AC and DC, which is pretty nice. I really like the fact that this is a smaller power station and it gives you all this information. And SUAOKI does offer a 24-month manufacturer's warranty. So let's take a look at what's in this big ass box it comes in. So inside we have, of course, the manual and these little boxes which contain the adapters. We have the AC adapter here, which says 29.2 volts at 1.2 amps. Inside this other box, we have all kinds of other goodies. USB-C cable for charging. That's kind of a nice addition. And you have this adapter for 5.5 millimeter. So you plug this into the output and it turns into 5.5 millimeter for a CPAP machine or other device that uses the standard barrel plug. That's a cool feature. I haven't seen that before. And of course you have the typical 12 volt socket. And then of course they include MC4 cables. That allows you to plug a solar panel into this side and the SUAOKI into this side. Let's take a look at the manual. You get a certificate, a QC, a thank you card. Now I do have to say this is a very well written manual. Everything is laid out really nice. Tells you how to charge it with solar, how to charge it with your car. One thing to note is that while this can be charged from your car, the car charger is actually not included. So you have to buy usually a separate plug that would go from your cigarette lighter into the SUAOKI. This has over discharge built into it, so it only goes down to 90% charge on the battery. That means you can fully charge and discharge this and not worry about killing the life cycle of this. It's the first time I've ever seen this mentioned in a manual. Another thing that's really cool is just like the MaxOak Blue Eddy, this has troubleshooting error codes, and in fact I think these are all exactly the same error codes because it's probably the same exact circuit board. So it does have over temperature, under temperature, over voltage, under voltage. Here are product specifications. Now this is for US and overseas. So that means they do make a model of this for those of you in Europe or Japan or other places of the world where you use 220. It gives you all the specifications here of the USB output. Note it does say here that the quick charge 3 port only supports 12 volts. But then over here it says the USB-C port supports 20 volts. Take note of that. Now one final note, this does have a section on cold weather for those of you in Canada or those of you that like to camp in really cold conditions. This will not charge below 0 degrees centigrade, and it will discharge below minus 20 centigrade. So you can still use it and discharge it down to minus 20 C, but then you can't charge it if it's below freezing. Now those of you that are confused or curious about this little adapter, what this does is this plugs into the 12 volt right here on the front, and then allows you to plug in a 5.5 millimeter barrel plug, which is the most common barrel plug you'll see in pretty much every device nowadays, including some CPAP machines. So it allows you to turn this 112 volt port into either a 5.5 or a 12 volt socket. So I did do a capacity test on this. Let's check out that footage now. This is the SUAOKI S200. We're doing test number 2 in some pretty serious wind. Starting voltage 12.4. I lost the time lapse the first time, so I'm just going to do another time lapse of this thing discharging. I actually got 194.29 watt hours, 19.32 amp hours at a total discharge time of 2 hours 30 minutes. Now the last bit I did discharge at only 2 amps, but that completely killed the battery. As you can see, I got a whopping 194 watt hours out of this thing. And that's supposed to have a built-in 90% depth of discharge, which means this actually has to be more like 216 watt hours, because if you discharge at 90%, that gives you 194 watt hours if it's actually a 216 watt hour battery. So I think they actually underrated this thing in the specifications. And I did do a 12 volt output test on this. Now the 12 volt output on this is not regulated. That means as the battery discharges, what comes out of the 12 volt port will get lower and lower voltage. So the range is from 10 volts when this thing's dead up to 12.4 volts when this thing is fully charged. The number one question I get, which I'm going to include in all these videos from now on, is can you charge this thing while it's in use? And of course the SUAOKI does allow you to charge it while you use it. Right now I have the DC on and the AC on, so the inverter and the DC ports are working while I am charging it all at the same time. Absolutely verified that you can use it while you're charging it. So I did do a low wattage test with this to see if it would time out and stop charging a low watt device. Low wattage test passed. 1 hour, 15 minutes. I also did a sine wave check on this to see if it's modified sine or pure sine. Here is the SUAOKI S200. We're performing the pure sine test. As you can see, pure sine wave, no problem. I did do a USB output rate check on this to test the ports to see if they are true to form. Here we are testing the QC3 port. You can see the maximum voltage I'm able to pull from the QC3 port is 12 volts. I was not able to get it to trigger to 20 volts. I'll show you. I'm going to go ahead and try to click it and get it to go higher, but it is not allowing 20 volts. So at 12 volts, we should be able to pull 3 amps because that's standard QC3 specification. So let's see if we can get 3 amps. But there we are, running at 3 amps. Let's see what happens if we exceed it slightly. 3.1. Oh, there we go, we killed it. So at 3.1 amps on the QC3 port, it completely kills the output. Officially pulling 36 watts from the device from the QC3 USB-A port. On the USB-A QC3 port, I was able to pull 34 watts, which is 12 volts at 3 amps, as tested. That's what they claim. However, on the USB-C port, whenever I tried to pull 20 volts from this, I could not. I can only get it to go up to 12 volts. I don't know if that's a problem with my testing procedures or if this just really doesn't support 20 volts. I also did a maximum rate charge test on this to see if it would, as claimed, charged at 60 watts. Here's that footage. Okay, we are currently at 12.2. Let's go ahead and crank it up and see when the charging begins. 12.4, okay, it just came on and it shows it is charging at 26 watts at 12.4 volts. That's pretty good. Let's bump it up to, this is the magic voltage because 13.6 volts is what your alternator in your vehicle would provide to this if you wanted to charge it off at 12 volts. So as you can see, at 13.5, we're getting a 54 watts there. And it says 56 watts here. Now, it's gonna say a little higher on this side because it's charging a battery. Let's bump it up to 14.4. Let's see what we get there. We're getting 54 watts. It's saying 57 watts. All right, we're making some progress. Let's bump this up to solar panel voltage, 18 volts. We're still getting 53 watts. This is looking a lot like an MPPT controller. So 40 is the maximum. Let's just go ahead and go right for 40. That would be 2 solar panels in series. And you can see, really didn't change anything. Still says 57 incoming. So there we go. Now let's see what happens if we exceed 40 volts. Oh. There you go. When you overvolt it, you get error message 16 on the input, which tells you, hey, you just overvolted me. And see, it's very delicate. It says right here 40.6. So yeah, you don't have to go very far over 40 volts and it will just cut you off. 38. Oh, and it goes back to charging. So you don't even have to reset it, it just goes back automatically. That's kind of nice. And as you can see, it does come close to the 60 watt charge rate. It will charge at a maximum of 57 watts according to my test, and that does not matter. As long as the voltage is over 15 volts, all the way up to 40 volts, it'll charge at 57 watts. And I did test the inverter on this. I was able to pull 120 watts from it, no problem. I was able to peak it a few times, close to 200 watts, and it does shut down with a code. So what do I like about this SUAOKI S200? Well, first, it has some pretty nice build quality. It's got a nice metal case with a rubberized handle. So I always like something that can be beat up on. Now, I've had this for 3 months. I actually got this thing back in July, and it's been out of stock. Basically, this is a new product that they had, and they told me not to do the review on it until it came into stock, which finally came into stock in October. So now I'm finally doing the review on this. That also means I got to spend a lot of time with this. I don't know if you can see on the camera, but there's scratches all over this thing. I've been using this thing, dragging it all over the place, really putting it through its paces, and I really do like this product. The MPPT charging in something this small is a real welcome feature. The other thing I like is that this sports a real pure sine inverter. Now, it's on the smaller side, but it'll run all your sensitive electronics with no problem, doesn't matter what they are. And also run your CPAP machines, no matter the brand. Now, some brands of CPAP tell you don't run them on a modified sine inverter. You don't have to worry about that in this case. What else do I like? This well-designed display. Now, this is a direct copy of the Max Oak Blue Eddy, so it has all the same features. The screen's exactly the same. Let's take a closer look at it. So here you get a nice close-up of the screen. You can see how it works. Hold down the power button to get it to turn on. And it comes on with a backlight. The backlight will shut off after a certain period of time. What's pretty cool is that this has separate DC and AC buttons. And you're probably gonna wonder, why would this have a separate button for DC? Why doesn't it just come on automatically? Well, let me show you why. It's pretty cool. Watch these ports down here at the bottom. See them light up? Now that's cool. Every power station should have this feature. The USB ports and the 12-volt port light up. And of course the AC inverter is separate. And you can see up here on the display, it does say DC on and AC on with the exact wattage coming in and out. Of course, it's not running anything. It's not going to say anything. And when you plug in a charger in the back, whether it's solar or in this case the AC wall outlet, that lights up too. Now isn't that cool? That makes it super easy in the dark to find the ports. So what else do I like about this? I was able to pull 194 watt hours from this battery when I should only have been able to pull 180 something if it only lets you drain to 90%. That means this battery has to be over capacity and a little larger than what they claim in the manual. What else do I like? I like the fact that this has all the types of USB charging you could possibly need. Everything from a regular USB-A port to a quick charge port to a power delivery USB-C port. That means no matter what USB device you have on this planet, you'll be able to power it from this device. That combined with a 12-volt output and a pure sine inverter makes this pretty much an all-in-one device. And that's the first time I can claim that on any of these power stations that I test. This thing comes closest to what I've seen to being great for pretty much any use, except it doesn't have that 12-volt regulated output. And that brings me down to the things that I do not like about this. And that is, again, and I'm sounding like a broken record, but how much harder would it be to add the percentage charge to the display? You got all these watt meters here, which tell you how many watts coming in, how many watts coming out for AC and DC. How hard would it be to put a percentage on there for how many percent the battery's charged? I'm really sick of these 5-segment generic battery icons because I want to know exactly how many percent the thing's charged so I know what my real capacity is. It's like those idiot lights that they put in cars. You know, your oil pressure light comes on. By the time that oil pressure light comes on, your engine's already fried. I want an oil pressure gauge. I want to know exact numbers when I own something like this. So what else don't I like? This does not have a built-in 12-volt socket unless you use the adapter. But worse, there's no regulated output. And since this battery's starting voltage is 12.4 volts, that means by the time you get down about halfway, you don't have usable 12-volt power anymore. That's probably the biggest downside of this device. It also would have been nice to have a 200-watt pure sine inverter on this. While 120-watt pure sine is fine, you might have a high-end gaming laptop or other device that requires just over 120 watts that this might struggle with. Now, it will handle loads up to 200 watts for a few seconds. But that's not going to help you if you're trying to charge something that requires more than 120 watts. Now, note, this is still plenty for a CPAP machine. Most of those don't take any more than 60 watts, so it's still plenty for that. And this is going to power any kind of netbook, small device, tablet, MacBook. All of those can still be powered from this, no problem. But if you have one of those like Alienware computers that have like a 200-watt power supply on it, this probably won't work with that. Lastly, one of my pet peeves with this device, it tips over easily. Now, I try to keep this thing upright as much as possible, but it seems like no matter what I do, it falls over. They could have made this shorter and stouter like the other power stations. I'm not really sure why they made it so tall and skinny. So what you end up doing is laying it flat when you use it. And like I said, you could probably see I got scratches all over both sides of this because I gotta lay it on its side when I use it. That also means the display is sideways. So you're gonna get used to going like this when you wanna see the input and output on your display. Now, it's not really a game changer or a big deal, but it would have been nice if it was in a little bit more stable of a package. On that note, do not leave this upright in your vehicle while you're driving. Make sure you lay it down, otherwise it's gonna go flying. So what is the direct competition for the SUAOKI 200 watt hour Well, on the right here, you have the BOUGERV 166 watt hour, which I just reviewed recently. This one is priced at $117 with all the HOBOTECH discounts and coupons. And on the left, you have the Jackery Explorer 240, after all HOBOTECH discounts and coupons, is $212. The SUAOKI is $167 with all coupons and discounts taken into effect, making it $50 more than the BOUGERVs, but $50 less than the Jackery. Exactly right in the middle of both. However, there's some definite differences between all three of these power stations. Let's go over real quickly which one will be better for your needs, because I'll have the links to all of them below. So the BOUGERV has excellent long life lithium iron phosphate battery. It also charges pretty quick, has a good modified sine inverter, excellent USB outputs, and it does provide a little bit higher voltage, 12 volt DC wise, than the SUAOKI. Now the lithium iron phosphate technology in the BOUGERVs actually means that this will have a higher voltage for longer, so it actually maintains a usable 12 volt voltage all the way down to about 80% discharge, to where it drops down to where it's not usable. The SUAOKI, on the other hand, has more of a linear drop because it uses regular lithium ion batteries. So after about 50% discharge rate, the 12 volt output on this is not really going to be good for a lot of 12 volt devices. The Jackery Explorer 240, which is the most expensive of the three, has a regulated 12 volt output that puts out 13.2 volts, no matter if it's fully charged or near empty. Now, if you're going to power a 12 volt device, the Jackery is by far the better way to go. It also has the better display, which shows you exact percentage of charge and input and output watts. That's something that these other two don't have. Now, in the middle, the SUAOKI does have a much better display than the BOUGERVs, but it's not as good as the Jackery. Here's one thing that the SUAOKI offers that the Jackery does not. That is MPPT charging. This thing will charge twice as fast as the Jackery. Even though this thing's 50 bucks more, it takes 6 hours to charge from solar. Well, you can charge this in 3.5 hours. The BOUGERVs also has MPPT charging, but also charges at a slower rate. So this will still take longer than the SUAOKI to charge from solar. So of the three of these, if you're charging from solar and you want it to charge fast, the SUAOKI is your #1 choice. Also, if you want quick charge ports of both technologies, including the USB-A quick charge and a USB-C power delivery port, this is the only device of the three that provides both of those. Now the BOUGERV is the least expensive here. It's probably also the longest life device. It's still a top pick for value and longevity. But since it doesn't offer a pure sine inverter, that's a real sticking point for a lot of people. A lot of people flame this device in the comments because it does not have a pure sine inverter like these other two do. So in finale, the BOUGERV is excellent because it has a long life lithium iron phosphate battery, excellent USB charging, it has a very usable modified sine inverter, and it is the lightest and most portable of the three. The SUAOKI, however, of the three is probably the most well-rounded because it lets you do kind of everything. It's fast charging, it has a pure sine inverter for all your devices, every type of USB fast charging possible, and it does offer a 12 volt output, even though the 12 volt output on this is its weakest trait. The display is also very good, and it is made of metal, so it's probably not going to fall apart anytime soon. And I do need to note that all three of these have the same 2-year warranty. If you're running a CPAP machine off the 12 volt output on this, or pretty much anything off the 12 volt output, you're going to want to get a Jackery. That's not saying you can't run a CPAP off of all three, you absolutely can. But this has the best 12 volt output. That's worth the money to a lot of people. So there you have it. If you're interested in more information about the SUAOKI 200 watt hour power station, there is a link in the description below along with the Amazon promo code, which will get you this thing for 167 bucks with discounts. That's a pretty good deal. And like I said, it's right in the middle of these two popular power stations. Now, I do want to let you know that SUAOKI is only providing this discount until the end of October. So if you want to get one of these for 167 bucks, you better step on it because the code for this expires on October 31st. Sorry for any of you who are watching this video after that. It's still a good deal even without the code. Hey, thanks for watching. If you learned something, don't forget to give me a thumbs up below. And if you have any questions about this product, be sure to throw them down in the comments. Also, come on over and join our Facebook group called the HOBOTECH Crew. People are always posting comments in there about solar generators and solar installations and things like that. Come post a picture of your rig and chat it up. Also, let you know, in case you don't already, all these products that I review and all the current discount codes are available on hobotech.tv/Amazon. The link for that is below. So that's it for now. Till next time.
Odin commands you to like and subscribe, and clean my litter box.
Hey Odin, how many F's do you give about the SUAOKI? Oh. And I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but that's what everyone else calls it, so I'm rolling with it. And it usually scales linearly, and usually scales linearly, and usually scales linearly, and it usually charges linearly. Hey, thank you for watching our video. If you liked it, be sure to subscribe, share, and like. And we'll see you guys next time. Say hi, Odin.
RV Golf Guy, hat.